Hi, I'm Jennifer Kenny. I'm the Director of Family Ministries at University Presbyterian Church. And for the last several weeks, we've been doing a series on discipleship in turbulent times. And today I want to talk about parenting in turbulent times. I think it's kind of funny that I get this topic because the very nature of parenting is turbulent. Well, at least it is for us. We've got a almost 14-year-old boy and an 11-and-a-half-year-old boy. Ours is the family that during the beginning of our stay-at-home order during the COVID outbreak, I was the mom that said, "Boys, stop fighting. I am not taking you to the ER during a pandemic." And literally about a week later, we found ourselves in the ER. The oldest boy had crashed his bicycle while getting exercise into a parked car. He chipped his teeth, his front teeth. He re-injured an arm that he had broken the year prior. And so an ER visit and then subsequent orthopedic visits, orthodontist visits, and a root canal. So we're that family. This has not been an easy season for us. Like you, we are parenting, we are working, we're teaching, all from home. And it seems like the only quiet is when we're all asleep. And so I think that while parenting is already turbulent, it's been made more challenging during this time. I can remember being a little girl on a flight from St. Louis back to Portland, Oregon, and we hit rough air. I was sitting next to my mom, and she grabbed the armrests and literally had white knuckles. And I looked up at her and I said, "Mom, what is this? Is this okay? Should I be afraid?" And she looked bravely at me and said, "No, it's okay. This is turbulence and we're going to be fine." I feel like that little image is what we're doing right now. Our kids are looking at us, whether they're expressing the question or not. They want to know, is this okay? And should I be afraid? And sometimes what we know would cause us to be afraid and cause us to be fearful. And yet what we model to our kids will help us all get through this time together. There are three quick things I want to say about basically commitments that we can make to help us during this turbulent time. The first is that we think about a commitment to Jesus. And then we think about a commitment to our family, to turn toward our family. And then third, a commitment to reach out. First, a commitment to Jesus. What does it mean for us to think about our relationship with Jesus during a turbulent and stressful time? Again, I go back on that airplane and I think about our flight attendant who tells us to put on our mask first, adults first, and then put your masks on your kids. It's really hard for us to do, but to prioritize our relationship with Jesus is probably the most important thing that we can do. To find some time during the day that we can individually respond to Jesus is so important, and it's so hard. I think about the scripture in Isaiah, chapter 6, verse 1. Isaiah writes, "In the year King Uzziah died, then I saw the Lord high and lifted up." I've thought about that verse for over 30 years. There's something about it that captures my attention. I think it has to do with the fact that Isaiah put a time and place marker on it, a timestamp, if you will. In the year King Uzziah died, he saw the Lord. In the year of great transition, in probably some unsettling time, is when God revealed himself to Isaiah. And I think right now we can ask, in this unsettling time, is God and might God be revealing himself to us? And so later on in that chapter, we hear a great call that God makes to Isaiah. Who will go for me? Whom shall I send? And Isaiah's response is, "Here I am, Lord, send me." And so in the midst of chaos, it might be completely conceivable that God is getting our attention, that he is drawing us toward him, and he's sending us. And I think that probably our first audience that he's sending us to is our family. The second thing I want us to think about is our commitment to our family, and what does it mean to turn toward one another rather than away from each other. A few years ago, we were house sitting in Hawaii. Some friends were serving on the mission field in Africa and needed us to watch their house for a few weeks. And so, of course, we said yes. After about a week of vacationing, the newscasts started rolling in that there was a hurricane headed toward us. Hurricane Lane was a few thousand miles away, but slowly and steadily made its progress toward the Hawaiian Islands. And suddenly we were faced with preparing for a Category 5 hurricane with a direct focus on the Hawaiian Islands. We were in someone else's house. We were in a neighborhood that we didn't know, and we had to take every precaution necessary to prepare for this storm. I can't think of a time I was more afraid for me personally and for my family as a unit. I wasn't sure what would happen to us. I wasn't sure how we would react or respond. I didn't know if we were prepared well enough. And during the midst of that waiting, I spent a lot of time praying, and I didn't feel God's peace until one night a song entered my head, just a fragment of a song. And the song lyric the phrase that entered my head was, I, the Lord of land and sea. And that word and that sentence wrestled around in my mind. And the next morning I Googled it and I found the song. And the song is called Here I Am, Lord. And maybe a little bit at the end I can play it for you. But it was a song of comfort, a reminder that God is all powerful, and he is the one who calms the wind and the rain and the storms that we were in. And I suddenly felt a peace that I needed to be able to face this hurricane. Fortunately for us, the hurricane did not hit Hawaii. In fact, it dissipated before it hit land. And we faced some extra rain, but outside of that, the disaster did not happen as we expected it. Our family took a photograph, and it's on my wall in my office. It's of 4 pairs of feet on the sand, all pointing toward one another. It's really common for us during times of crisis, times of turbulence, to each find our own corners. In fact, in our homes today, I think we do that right now. One child in one room on a computer, another in another room on a computer, a spouse in a third room on a computer, and the 4th spouse in another room. We found our own spaces, and it's probably pretty easy for us to live out this storm separate from one another. And yet God has placed us together. God has called us to be together and to draw near to one another and to turn toward each other. If at all possible, I encourage you as a family to turn toward each other and to draw near to each other. Dr. John Gottman has done a lot of research on healthy marriages, and one of the biggest indicators in a healthy marriage is whether the spouses turn toward one another. You can read more about that research, but I think it probably also applies to family life. How can we draw and turn toward one another and benefit from one another rather than trying to escape each other? Now, like I said, we're living in a real family, and I know this is not easy. I know that at times we send each other to the corners and ask for peace and quiet. And so turning toward each other doesn't mean spending all moments together, but it does mean carving out some quality time when we can focus on one another. We can play a game together. We can laugh together. We can build a memory together. The reason I took that picture, the reason I've hung it on my wall from Hawaii is a reminder that together we weathered that storm. And it was turning toward one another. We operated as a team, and that is what helped us, with God's help, weather that hurricane or the threat thereof. The third thing and the final thing I want to leave with you is that we commit to reach out. Now, I say this because I think it's so important. I want to recognize that not every family can turn toward each other. In fact, many of our families are broken and are falling apart. And this storm has illuminated the brokenness. This storm has made us feel alone and made us feel as if there's no hope for our family. And so if that's the case, I would encourage you to reach out to find support. I'm in several different mom groups that meet weekly on Zoom calls. At first, moms came to these Zoom calls and we saw tears. We saw frustration. One mom reported that she said, boy, I thought that when my husband was working at home, that he would see all that I do during a day to help our kids, to prepare meals. And I hoped that he would see that and recognize it and pitch in. And it didn't happen. And she was frustrated. I've heard from other parents with similar frustrations of wanting to be more a family and realizing that there's brokenness and dysfunction. I would encourage you, if you don't have a network of people that you can talk to reach out. That is what the church is for. The community of believers who can come alongside each other and support one another during these tough times. And so if you don't have a community of people, I would encourage you to email me and I can find you a group of people to talk to. If your concerns are more severe, if you find that your family is falling apart in such a way that a support group or a group of friends isn't going to help, the same offer is true. Email me and I will try to connect you with professional resources, with therapists or doctors who can help. There are people who are willing to help, and yet we can't find each other. And so sometimes if we can commit to reaching out and to asking for help, we are able to receive it. My email is jenniferk@upc.org. So I will work to find you a group of people that you can connect with, men or women, and we don't need to do this alone. If you are coming from a place of stability, then this commitment to reaching out means to serve. It means to opening your space, your home, your Zoom call to somebody who needs you. When I say opening our home, we're not quite yet available, or we're not quite yet encouraged to open our homes physically, but you know that I mean that we open our space and our time to people who might need us, that we think about what we can do to serve our community, serve our neighbors, serve our church community, serve other families. So in short, 3 commitments. We remind ourselves of our commitment to Jesus Christ, that he alone is the one that will carry us through. He has offered to us that he will carry our heavy burdens and he will provide us with rest. And so I encourage you to lean into Jesus, to commit to Jesus. Commit to having your family turn toward one another and to reconnect with one another. And then finally, commit to reach out, whether that's a reach out and ask for help, or it's a reach out and a willingness to serve. I'm praying for you. I want you to know that many on our staff are thinking about the number of families in our congregation individually and prayerfully. And I pray that God will bless you and bless us during this time.